At 42, my life was a portrait of stability, painted in the soft hues of faith and family. In our modest, sunlit home nestled in the serene neighborhood of Lakeview, I found joy in the rhythm of daily prayers, the laughter of my 3 children, and the steady presence of my husband, Tariq. Every morning, I unrolled my prayer rug with a sense of purpose, the verses of the Quran flowing from my lips like a soothing melody. My faith was the cornerstone of my existence, a lantern guiding me through life's uncertainties. Yet, it was in the ordinariness of one April morning, amid the aroma of fresh bread and the faint hum of a distant song, that the foundations of my world began to shift. A faint, unfamiliar smell crept into the air, unassuming at first but growing insistent, a harbinger of a truth that would unravel everything I believed. To 42, I thought I had my life mapped out. My days were a harmonious rhythm of faith, family, and simple joys. In our modest home in Lakeview, the walls echoed with the laughter of my children, the murmurs of evening prayers, and the warmth of shared meals. My husband, Tariq, and I had built a life together rooted in our shared faith, raising our 3 children with the same unwavering devotion to Islam that had been the cornerstone of my upbringing. 5 times a day, I would kneel on my prayer rug, face Mecca, and let the familiar verses of the Quran flow over me like a comforting tide. But nothing could have prepared me for the day when everything I knew and believed would be turned upside down. It was April 29th, a morning that began like any other. The summer had been unusually harsh, with temperatures plummeting to uncharacteristic lows. After completing my dawn prayers, I moved to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. The comforting aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the scent of cardamom tea as I worked. Upstairs, I could hear my youngest daughter, Lila, humming a playful tune, her voice light and carefree. The morning felt ordinary, peaceful, safe. Reaching for the honey jar perched on the top shelf of the pantry, I paused. A strange smell lingered in the air. At first, it was so faint I almost dismissed it, overwhelmed by the warm fragrance of bread. But within moments, it intensified, a sharp, chemical tang that made my nose burn and my throat itch. My first thought was practical. Perhaps the furnace was malfunctioning. I called out to Tariq, who was still upstairs getting ready for work. "Habibi, do you smell that?" Silence. The smell grew stronger, and my unease deepened. My eyes began to water, and my chest tightened. Then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible hissing sound coming from the basement. A cold knot of dread coiled in my stomach. I should have evacuated the house right then. I should have grabbed my children and run. But maternal instinct and curiosity got the better of me. All I could think about was making sure my family was safe. Heart-pounding, I moved toward the basement door. As I opened it, a wave of dizziness hit me. The smell was overwhelming now, heavy and cloying. I gripped the railing tightly as I descended a few steps, each movement feeling sluggish and heavy. The basement was dim, the faint morning light filtering through a small window. I could just make out the source of the hissing, a broken pipe near the water heater, spewing an invisible menace into the air. Carbon monoxide, though I wouldn't know it until later. The colorless, odorless gas was silently filling our home. My body reacted before my mind could fully process the danger. My vision blurred, and my limbs felt like lead. I tried to turn back, to retreat up the stairs, but my legs refused to cooperate. The world spun, and the edges of my sight darkened. As I collapsed at the bottom of the stairs, I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call for help. My fingers wouldn't obey, slipping uselessly over the screen. The last thing I heard before the darkness closed in was Lila's voice, faint and distant, calling, "Mama!" Then everything went black. In that void, I was certain I was dying. My thoughts raced to my children, to Tariq, to the life I was leaving behind. I recited the Shahada. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, thinking these would be my final words. I wanted to die as a good Muslim, secure in the faith that had guided my every step. But death, I discovered, was not the end. What happened next is something I struggle to put into words, though I've tried countless times since. One moment, I was trapped in the suffocating darkness of my failing body. The next, I was weightless, free. I hovered above the scene, watching as though through a veil. I saw my own body crumpled at the foot of the stairs, pale and still. Paramedics burst through the door, their voices urgent but muffled, as if underwater. I watched them work on me, performing CPR and preparing to transport me to the hospital. But I felt no fear, no pain, only a profound sense of peace. And then I was moving, pulled away from the scene, away from my body, through what I can only describe as a tunnel of light. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, inviting, alive. It seemed to pulse with love, a love so pure and overwhelming that I wept, or would have had I still had a physical form. I was no longer bound by the limitations of my earthly body. My senses were heightened, my understanding expanded. It was as though I could see, hear, and feel all at once, yet more deeply than ever before. As I moved through the tunnel, my entire life unfolded before me, not as a series of memories, but as living moments I could step into and experience again. I saw myself as a child in Morocco, learning to pray at my grandmother's side. I felt the sincerity of those early prayers, but now, through the lens of this new perspective, I saw something else, a yearning, an unfulfilled longing for a connection I had not yet known. I saw myself defending Islam to others, quoting verses from the Quran with confidence. Yet, with each word, I felt a heaviness in my heart, as though I had been speaking truths mixed with untruths, never realizing the weight of the latter. I saw moments of doubt I had buried, questions I had silenced. They resurfaced now, illuminated by a clarity I could not ignore. At the end of the tunnel, the light grew brighter, and I found myself in the presence of a being so radiant, so indescribably beautiful, that my soul seemed to bow in reverence without hesitation. I knew instantly who he was, though I had never truly known him before. It was Jesus Christ. His presence was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It radiated truth, power, and a love so intense it felt as though it would consume me. Yet it didn't. Instead, it healed me. It filled every empty space within me, every doubt, every fear. In his presence, I understood things I had never been able to comprehend before. The complexity of the Trinity, which I had once mocked as illogical, now made perfect sense. It wasn't something to be grasped by the mind alone, but understood with the spirit. Amina, he spoke, his voice a symphony of love and authority. You have sought truth with all your heart, but you have been deceived. In that moment, every teaching I had held dear about Muhammad and Allah crumbled. I was shown visions of the real Muhammad, not the sanitized version I had been taught. I saw his human flaws, his ambitions, and the spiritual deception that had ensnared him. Yet there was no judgment in what I was shown, only clarity. The path you walked was sincere, Jesus continued, but it was not the truth. The God you sought was not the true God, but I am here to reveal him to you. I wept, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization of how blind I had been, and how merciful he was to open my eyes now. Jesus showed me more: the cross, his sacrifice, the veil torn between God and humanity. I saw his resurrection, not as a story, but as an event so powerful it resonated across time and space. Will you accept this truth? He asked. Yes, I whispered, though the words seemed inadequate to express the depth of my surrender. In that instant, I felt as though scales fell from my spiritual eyes. The light around me grew brighter, not blinding but illuminating. I saw visions of people I knew, my husband, my children, my parents. I saw the path my life would take if I chose to follow him, and the challenges it would bring: rejection, loss, persecution. But I also saw the eternal joy and peace that awaited. You must return, Jesus said. There is work for you to do. Share what you have seen and heard. Lead others to the truth. Before I could respond, I felt myself being pulled back. The warmth of the light faded, replaced by the cold, sterile brightness of a hospital room. Pain surged through my body, and the weight of the world settled heavily on me. My heart was beating again. I was alive, But I was not the same.